I was standing in my son's kitchen in South Charlotte, looking at a property deed that had my heart beating so hard I thought I might pass out. My name wasn't on it. I'd given Michael $85,000 6 months ago. $85,000 that I'd saved over 30 years working as a property manager in Charlotte. Money I'd scraped together from managing apartment complexes, dealing with difficult tenants, fixing broken air conditioners at midnight, and learning every single clause of North Carolina real estate law, because that's what you had to do to survive in that business. I'd given him that money with one condition. One simple, clear, non-negotiable condition. My name goes on the deed. Not because I wanted to control his house. Not because I didn't trust him. But because I'm 55 years old, I'm single, and I need to know that if something happens, if I get sick, if I can't work anymore, if life throws me one more curveball, I have a place to land. That was the deal. He'd looked me in the eyes and said, "Of course, Mama. Of course you'll be on the deed. This is your house too. You paid off the mortgage. You helped with the down payment 3 years ago. This is as much yours as it is mine." But the deed in my hands said different. Michael Hayes and Vanessa Hayes. That's it. That's all. No Gloria Hayes. No mention of the woman who'd raised Michael by herself after his father walked out when he was 4. No mention of the woman who'd worked double shifts so he could go to UNC Charlotte without loans. No mention of the woman who'd just handed over her entire savings so he could live mortgage-free at 32 years old. Just Michael and Vanessa. I stood there in that kitchen. All granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that I'd helped make possible, and felt something cold settle into my bones. My name is Gloria Hayes. I'm 55 years old, and I spent 30 years in property management before I semi-retired last year. I know real estate. I know contracts. I know exactly what it means when someone's name is on a deed, and when it's not. And I know what it means when someone promises you one thing and delivers another. Mama. You okay? I looked up. Michael had just walked into the kitchen, home from his job as an operations manager at a logistics company. Still in his work clothes, tie loosened, looking tired but successful. Looking like everything I'd worked for. Looking like a stranger. "This came in the mail today," I said, holding up the deed. The final recorded deed from the county. His face did something I'd never seen before. A flicker of guilt, quickly covered by something else. Something defensive. "Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. Your name is on here. Vanessa's name is on here. My name is not." "Mama, I can explain. We had an agreement, Michael. You looked me in the face and promised me my name would be on this deed. I gave you $85,000 based on that promise." "I know, but Vanessa and I talked about it, and she felt like it was kind of unusual to have your parent on the deed. Her friends thought it was weird, and her mom said it could complicate things if we ever wanted to sell or refinance." Complicate things. I repeated the words slowly, tasting the bitterness. "I gave you $85,000, and having my name on the deed would complicate things. It's not like that. You're still family. You'll always have a place here if you need it. We don't need a legal document for that." "Yes, we do. That's exactly what we need. Because legal documents are the only thing that means anything when people decide to change their minds." He had the audacity to look hurt. "You don't trust me? I trusted you 6 months ago when you promised me my name would be on this deed. And now it's not. So no, Michael. Right now I don't." Behind him, I heard footsteps. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, perfect hair, perfect makeup, still in her work clothes from her job as a pharmaceutical sales rep. She'd been with Michael for 4 years, married for 2, and I'd tried. Lord knows I'd tried to like her. But there was something about Vanessa that always felt calculated. The way she'd slowly started making decisions for Michael. The way she'd positioned herself between him and me. Always with a smile. Always with an explanation about why things needed to be their way now. "Gloria, I know you're upset," Vanessa said in that smooth, professional voice she used when she was trying to manage me. "But you have to understand, this is our house. We appreciate everything you've done, but Michael and I need to make our own decisions about our property. Your property that I paid for. That you helped with. As a gift. That's what you said, wasn't it? An early inheritance. And there it was. The shift. The reframing. Yes, I'd called it an early inheritance. But I'd also been crystal clear about the condition. My name on the deed. Security for my future. A gift with a condition that you agreed to, I said, looking at Michael, not Vanessa. A condition you're now breaking. Mama, please don't make this a big thing. It is a big thing. It's $85,000 and my financial security. That's a very big thing. You still have your house, Vanessa said. You still have your retirement accounts. You're not destitute. The way she said destitute made something in my chest tighten. Like she'd been thinking about my finances. Like she'd been taking inventory. I'm leaving, I said, setting the deed down on their granite counter. But this conversation isn't over. We made an agreement, and I expect you to honor it. Mama. We'll talk later. I walked out of that house. That beautiful house in the nice part of South Charlotte, with its manicured lawn and its 2-car garage, and its mortgage that I'd erased with a single check, and I drove back to my neighborhood. Plaza Midwood. Older homes. Smaller yards. Working-class families who'd been there for generations. My house that I'd bought 20 years ago, and that was worth maybe $280,000 if the market was good. Nothing fancy. But mine. Paid off. Secure. Or so I'd thought. I sat in my driveway for a long time after I parked, looking at my little house with its front porch that needed painting, and its garden that I tended every weekend. I'd worked so hard for this. For all of it. For Michael's education, for his opportunities, for his success. I'd sacrificed relationships, vacations, my own comfort. I'd worn the same winter coat for 8 years so Michael could have new clothes for college. I'd driven a car with 200,000 miles so I could save for his future. And he'd promised me one thing in return. One thing. Security. A place on that deed. A guarantee that I wouldn't be alone and vulnerable in my old age. And he'd taken it away because his wife thought it was weird. I went inside and made myself tea. Sat at my kitchen table, smaller than theirs, older than theirs, but mine, and tried to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I just needed to give him time to fix it. Maybe he'd go back to the lawyer and add my name, and everything would be fine. Maybe. But 30 years of property management had taught me something important. When people show you who they are through their actions, believe them. Michael had promised me one thing and delivered another. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. And Vanessa's comment about my finances. You still have your house. You still have your retirement accounts. Kept echoing in my head. Why would she say that? Why would she inventory what I had unless she was thinking about it for a reason? I shook my head. I was being paranoid. They were just being selfish and thoughtless about the deed. That was bad enough without inventing conspiracy theories. I needed to talk to someone who would think clearly. I called my friend Ruth. We'd worked together in property management for 15 years before she'd retired to Florida last year. She knew real estate law as well as I did, and she'd met Michael plenty of times. Gloria, you need to get that in writing, Ruth said after I explained the situation. Email him right now. Outline what you gave him, what the agreement was, and ask him to confirm in writing that he'll add your name to the deed. You think he won't? I think Vanessa won't let him. And I think you need documentation of what was promised before this gets worse. Worse how? I don't know. But when someone takes $85,000 and then changes the deal, that's not a good sign. Protect yourself. After I hung up, I did what Ruth suggested. Wrote a careful email to Michael. Michael, I wanted to follow up on our conversation today about the property deed. As we discussed when I gave you $85,000 6 months ago, the agreement was that my name would be added to the deed for 2157, Wendover Road. This was not just a gift. It was an early inheritance with a specific condition meant to ensure my financial security as I age. The deed I received today lists only you and Vanessa as owners. This was not our agreement. Please confirm in writing that you will have my name added to the deed as we originally discussed. I have all the bank records showing the $85,000 transfer, as well as the text messages where we discussed this arrangement. I love you, and I want us to resolve this quickly and fairly. Mom. I sent it at 8:47 p.m. He didn't respond that night. Or the next day. Or the day after that. A week went by. Then 2. I called him. Voicemail. I texted him. No response. Finally, 3 weeks after I'd sent that email, he texted back. Mom, Vanessa and I have talked about this a lot. We feel like adding your name to the deed at this point would be complicated. We appreciate everything you've done, but we need to move forward with our own plans. We'll make sure you're taken care of if you ever need help. Trust us. Trust us. The 2 most meaningless words in the English language when they're coming from someone who just broke a promise. I sat with that text for a long time, reading it over and over, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't just about the deed anymore. This wasn't just about the money. This was about Michael choosing Vanessa over me. About him breaking his word. About him treating my financial security like an inconvenience to his marriage. And that phrase, if you ever need help, was the kind of vague, unenforceable promise that meant nothing. Not you'll always have a home here. Not we'll take care of you. Just if you ever need help. With no specifics, no commitment, no guarantee. I knew what that meant in property management terms. It meant I had nothing. No legal claim. No security. Just hope that my son would be a better man than he was currently showing himself to be. I needed to think. I needed to figure out my options. I needed. My phone rang. Michael. Finally calling instead of texting. Mom. Michael. Look, I know you're upset about the deed thing. I'm sorry. I really am. But Vanessa's right. It's just easier this way. And it's not like we're going to kick you out or anything. You're always welcome here. That's not the same as having my name on the deed. I know, but... He paused. I heard a voice in the background. Vanessa's voice, though I couldn't make out the words. Mama, I have to go. We're having dinner. We'll talk more later, okay? When? Soon. I promise. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone, feeling more alone than I'd felt in years. And that's when I decided to do what I should have done the day I saw that deed. I drove back to their house. It was a Wednesday evening, around 7 o'clock. Michael's car was in the driveway, but as I was pulling up, I saw him leave through the front door, gym bag in hand. He got in his car and drove off without even seeing me. Vanessa's car was still there. I almost turned around. Almost drove home. But something made me get out of the car and walk up to that front door. I rang the bell. Vanessa answered, and for just a second, just a flash, I saw something in her face that wasn't the usual polished friendliness. Something cold. Something calculating. Then it was gone, replaced by her smile. Gloria. This is a surprise. Is Michael here? He just left for the gym. Did you need something? I need to talk to both of you about the deed. About adding my name like we agreed. Michael told you, we've decided that doesn't work for us. I'm sorry you're upset, but that's our decision. The way she said our decision made it clear whose decision it really was. Vanessa, I gave you $85,000. You gave it to Michael. As a gift. And we're very grateful. But that doesn't mean you get to dictate how we handle our property. It wasn't a gift. It was an agreement. Do you have that agreement in writing? Ist her. It was my son. I trusted him. Well, that was your choice. But legally, without a written contract, you gave him a gift. And gifts don't come with conditions you can enforce after the fact. She said it so smoothly. So confidently. Like she'd looked it up. Like she'd consulted a lawyer. Like she'd been planning for this conversation. You're not going to add my name to the deed, I said slowly. No, we're not. Even though Michael promised. Michael says a lot of things to make you happy. But this is our house. Our decision. Our life. She started to close the door. I put my hand on it. This isn't over. Actually, Gloria, it is. And I'd appreciate it if you'd call before just showing up at our home in the future. We have a right to our privacy. She closed the door. I stood there on that porch, the porch I'd helped pay for, and felt rage and grief and fear all mixing together in my chest. I walked back to my car in a daze, sat behind the wheel. And that's when I heard it. Vanessa's voice, coming through a window that must have been open. She was on the phone. I know, Mom. She was just here. No, Michael doesn't know. He's at the gym. I handled it. She's not going to be a problem. Because I already talked to the lawyer about it. Gift, not a loan. No written agreement. She has no legal claim. I know. 6 weeks. That's when we file. Then it's just a matter of waiting for the hearing. Mom, trust me. Once we have guardianship, we can sell both houses and... The window closed. I couldn't hear the rest. But I'd heard enough. Guardianship. Sell both houses. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I sat in that car, parked in front of my son's house, and felt my entire reality crack open. They weren't just refusing to add my name to the deed. They were planning something bigger. Something that involved the word guardianship. Something that involved selling not just their house, but mine too. Both houses. I drove home in shock. Parked in my driveway. Walked into my house like I was moving through water. Guardianship. I knew what that meant. I'd seen it during my property management career. I'd dealt with families who put elderly parents under guardianship or conservatorship when they couldn't manage their own affairs anymore. When they were declared incompetent. When they weren't capable of making their own decisions. They were trying to have me declared incompetent. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my laptop and started researching North Carolina guardianship law. What I found made my blood run cold. If someone could prove you were incapable of managing your own affairs, if they could show evidence of memory problems, confusion, inability to handle finances, they could petition the court for guardianship. And if they won, they'd control everything. Your money, your property, your medical decisions, where you lived, everything. You'd lose your autonomy, your independence, your freedom. They could sell your house, move you to a nursing home, make every decision for you. And according to what I was reading, these cases happened all the time. Adult children claiming their parents couldn't take care of themselves anymore. Judges who relied on the testimony of concerned family members. Older people who lost everything because someone convinced a court they were incompetent. I sat back from my laptop, my heart pounding. 6 weeks, Vanessa had said. That's when we file. They were building a case. They had a lawyer. They had a plan. And suddenly, everything from the last 6 months made horrible sense. The times Vanessa had asked me to repeat myself, then said, Gloria, you just told us that story. The times she'd corrected me in front of Michael about dates or names, making it seem like I was confused. The time Michael had called me, concerned, and asked if I'd been forgetting things, because Vanessa mentioned you seemed a little mixed up the other day. They weren't random moments. They were building a narrative. They were creating evidence that I was losing my memory, losing my grip, losing my competence, so they could take everything I had. Not just the $85,000 they'd already taken. Everything. I thought about my house, my retirement accounts, everything I'd worked 30 years to build, all of it at risk, because my son and his wife wanted it. I sat in my quiet house, in my quiet neighborhood, and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear that I could lose everything. That I could be declared incompetent and moved into some facility while they sold my home and spent my money. That I could end up with nothing at 55 years old because I'd trusted my own son. But then slowly, the fear started to shift. Started to harden into something else. Something colder. Something more dangerous. I'm Gloria Hayes. I'm 55 years old. I spent 30 years in property management, dealing with con artists and scammers, and people who thought they could outsmart the system. And I know something that Vanessa and Michael apparently don't. I know how guardianship cases work. I know what evidence courts look for. I know how to document everything. And I know how to build a case of my own. If they wanted to play this game, if they wanted to try to take my freedom and my assets because they thought I was an easy target, they were about to learn something about women my age. We don't break as easily as people think. And we always keep receipts. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Evidence of competence. Evidence that I was perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Evidence that would destroy their case before they even filed it. And evidence of what they were planning, because if they thought I was going to sit quietly while they built their case, they were very, very wrong. They had 6 weeks before they filed. I had 6 weeks to make sure they lost everything instead. Now, before I tell you what I did next, let me ask you something. If you're listening to this thinking, Gloria, how did you fight back? Hit that subscribe button, because what comes next is going to show you exactly how a woman who knows property law takes down the people trying to steal her freedom. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Charlotte? Atlanta? Birmingham? Memphis? Let me know who's out there, because I want to hear from women who've had to protect themselves from their own family. Alright, now let me tell you about the case I started building. The first thing I did was call Ruth back. They're trying to get guardianship over me, I said without preamble. There was a long silence. Gloria, slow down. Tell me everything. I told her. The overheard phone conversation. The plan to file in 6 weeks. The realization that the last 6 months had been them building a case. When I finished, Ruth was quiet for a moment. Okay. First, do not panic. Second, you need a lawyer. Not a property lawyer, an elder law attorney who specializes in guardianship cases. And third, you need to start documenting your competence immediately. I am competent. I know that. You know that. But if they've been building a narrative for 6 months, you need counter-evidence. Hard evidence. The kind a judge can't dismiss. What kind of evidence? Medical evaluation. Cognitive testing. Financial records showing you manage your money properly. Work history. Volunteer activities. Anything that proves you're mentally sharp, physically capable, and financially responsible. And Gloria. Yeah. You need to do this without them knowing. If they figure out you know what they're planning, they might accelerate the timeline or change their strategy. After I hung up, I sat down with a legal pad and started making a list. What they're probably claiming. Memory problems. Confusion. Inability to manage finances. Need for supervision. What I need to prove. Sharp memory. Clear thinking. Financial competence. Independent living capability. I started with my medical records. I called my primary care physician, Dr. Williams, who I'd been seeing for 12 years, and made an appointment. I need something specific. I told her when I was in her office 2 days later. I need a cognitive evaluation. Full neurological workup. Memory testing. Everything. Dr. Williams looked at me over her glasses. Gloria, you're one of the sharpest 55-year-olds I know. Why do you need this? Because my son and his wife are trying to have me declared incompetent so they can take guardianship and steal my assets. Her expression shifted from confusion to anger. They're doing what? I explained everything. The deed. The overheard conversation. The 6-week timeline. That's elder abuse, Dr. Williams said flatly. And I'm going to make sure you have every piece of medical documentation you need to fight it. She ordered the full battery. Cognitive function tests, memory assessments, neurological examination, mental status evaluation. Everything. I took all of them over the next week. And I scored perfectly. Your cognitive function is that of someone 20 years younger, Dr. Williams said, handing me the results. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning skills are sharp. You show no signs of cognitive decline, confusion, or impairment of any kind. I'm writing all of this up in a detailed letter for your legal team. Thank you. Gloria, when this is over, I want you to consider filing a complaint against them. What they're doing is seriously illegal. Next, I went to my bank. I'd been with the same credit union for 25 years. I had a checking account, a savings account, and a retirement account, all managed perfectly. I met with the branch manager, Teresa, who I'd known for years. I need copies of all my account statements for the last 2 years, I told her. And I need a letter from the bank confirming that I manage my accounts responsibly, that I've never been overdrawn, that I make regular deposits and withdrawals, and that there are no signs of financial confusion or mismanagement. What's going on, Gloria? I told her. She looked horrified. I've seen this before, Teresa said. Family members trying to take control of elderly relatives' finances by claiming they can't handle money. It's disgusting. I'm 55. I'm not elderly. That's what makes this even worse. They're not even waiting for you to actually need help. They're just taking it. Teresa got me everything I needed. 2 years of perfect financial records. A letter from the bank praising my financial management. Documentation of my retirement savings and my responsible spending patterns. Then I went to my former employer. I'd worked for Caldwell Property Management for 28 years before semi-retiring last year. I still consulted occasionally, helping with difficult tenancy issues and training new property managers. I met with my former boss, James Caldwell. I need you to write me a letter, I said, documenting my work history, my expertise, my skills, and the fact that I'm still sharp enough to consult on complex property law issues. James didn't even ask why. He just said, give me 2 days. The letter he wrote was 3 pages long. It detailed my 30 years of experience, my expertise in real estate law, my problem-solving skills, and my continued work as a consultant. It included specific examples of complex cases I'd handled recently. It was perfect. I also reached out to 3 other references. The pastor at my church, where I volunteered every week organizing the food pantry. My neighbor Mr. Peterson, who I'd helped navigate a complicated tenancy dispute. And Ruth, who could speak to my professional competence from years of working together. All of them agreed to provide statements or testimony if needed. Within 2 weeks, I had a file 3 inches thick. Medical evaluations proving perfect cognitive function. Financial records proving responsible money management. Work history proving continued professional capability. References proving active community involvement and sharp problem solving. Everything a judge would need to see that I was perfectly competent. But that was just the defense. I also needed offense. I needed to prove what Michael and Vanessa were doing. That's where things got tricky. I couldn't just walk up to them and demand to know their plan. They'd deny it, change their strategy, maybe accelerate the timeline. I needed evidence of their scheme. I started by going through every interaction I'd had with them over the last 6 months, writing down every time Vanessa had tried to make me seem confused or forgetful. The time she'd said, "Gloria, you already told us that story," when I hadn't. The time she'd corrected me about a date I'd gotten right. The time she'd asked me the same question 3 times in one conversation, then told Michael I seemed confused. Each incident, written down with dates and details, started to show a pattern. But I needed more than my own observations. I needed recordings. In North Carolina, I looked it up carefully. You can record conversations you're part of without telling the other person. One-party consent state. As long as I'm in the conversation, I can record it legally. So I bought a small digital recorder. The kind you can slip in your pocket. And I started recording every interaction with Michael and Vanessa. The next time Vanessa called me, asking in that sweet, concerned voice how I was doing, I recorded it. And sure enough, within 10 minutes she started. "Gloria, you sound tired. Are you remembering to take your medications?" "I don't take any medications except vitamins." "Are you sure? I could have sworn Michael mentioned you were on something for blood pressure." "I don't have blood pressure problems, Vanessa." "Oh, maybe I'm confused. Although, you did seem a little mixed up last time we talked. You told me the same story twice." "I didn't tell you any story twice." "Well, maybe you don't remember. That's okay. It happens at your age." "I'm 55, I thought. Not 85. But I just said, "Thanks for checking on me, Vanessa." After I hung up, I had her on tape, trying to plant the idea that I was forgetful, confused, and at that age. I kept recording. Every phone call, every visit, every interaction. And slowly, a different picture emerged. Vanessa constantly suggesting I was confused. Michael asking leading questions. "Mom, are you sure you paid that bill? You mentioned it twice." I hadn't. Both of them documenting these supposed incidents. "I'm just worried about you, Mom. Maybe we should have a doctor look at your memory." They were building their case. But I was building mine. 3 weeks after I'd overheard that phone conversation, I met with an attorney. His name was David Morrison, and he specialized in elder law, specifically in fighting inappropriate guardianship petitions. I'd found him through a recommendation from Dr. Williams, who said he was the best in Charlotte at this type of case. I brought him everything: the medical evaluations, the financial records, the work history, the recordings, the timeline of Vanessa's behavior. He listened to all of it, reading through the documents, his expression growing darker. "This is a clear case of attempted financial exploitation," he said finally. "They're trying to manufacture a guardianship case so they can access your assets. It's more common than you'd think. Can they win? Not with this evidence. Not even close. Your medical evaluations alone would defeat any competency claim. But Gloria, here's what concerns me. They haven't filed yet. You said 6 weeks from when you overheard that conversation." "Yes. That was 3 weeks ago." "So they're planning to file in about 3 weeks. What do I do until then?" "You keep documenting. Keep recording. Keep gathering evidence. And when they file their petition, because they will, we're going to be ready to destroy it in court. But more than that, we're going to file a countersuit for attempted financial exploitation and elder abuse." "Even though I'm 55? Elder abuse laws in North Carolina apply to vulnerable adults, which includes anyone over 50 in certain circumstances. What they're doing absolutely qualifies. And when we're done, they won't just lose their guardianship petition. They'll face legal consequences." "What about the $85,000 they already have?" "We'll address that too. If we can prove the money was given based on an agreement they violated, and you have that email you sent, we can make a case for civil fraud. You might not get all of it back, but we can certainly try." I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. But I also felt something else: anger. Because now that I understood what they were trying to do, now that I could see the full scope of their scheme, I couldn't unsee it. They weren't just taking my money. They were trying to take my freedom, my independence, my autonomy. They wanted to declare me incompetent so they could control my life, sell my house, spend my retirement, and put me in some facility where I'd be manageable. And they were doing it while looking me in the face and calling me mom. That night, I lay awake in my bed, in my house, my paid-off house that they wanted to sell, and made a decision. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to make sure they paid for what they'd tried to do. The next morning, Michael called. "Hey, Mama. Haven't talked to you in a while. How are you doing?" I pressed record on my device. "I'm good. How are you?" "Good. Listen, Vanessa and I were talking, and we're concerned about you. You seemed really upset about the deed thing, and we just want to make sure you're okay, mentally and emotionally." There it was. The setup. "Fine, Michael. Are you sure? Because you've seemed a little— I don't know how to say this without offending you, but you've seemed a little confused lately. Forgetting things. Repeating yourself." "I haven't been confused or forgetful. Mom, you called me 3 times last week about the same thing. I called you once to follow up on the deed situation because you never responded to my email. See, that's what I mean. You don't even remember calling multiple times. And that's okay. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But Vanessa and I think maybe you should see a doctor. Get checked out. Make sure everything's okay." "I've already seen my doctor. I'm fine." "You have? When?" "Shit. I shouldn't have said that. Recently. For my regular checkup." "Did you mention the memory issues?" "There are no memory issues, Michael." "Mom, denial is part of the problem. Look, Vanessa and I love you. We want to help. We think maybe it's time to talk about making some arrangements. For your care. For your future." "What kind of arrangements?" "Just making sure you're safe. Making sure your finances are being managed properly. Maybe looking at living situations that would give you more support." "Living situations. Like a facility. I'm 55 years old, Michael. I don't need a living situation with support. I need my son to honor his promises. This isn't about the deed anymore, Mom. This is about your health. Your well-being. My well-being is fine. Is it? Because from where Vanessa and I are sitting, it seems like you're struggling. And we can't just stand by and watch you decline without doing something. Decline. That was the word they were going to use in court. I'm not declining. Mom. If you say so. But we're going to keep an eye on things. Because we love you and we want to make sure you're taken care of. After he hung up, I saved the recording with the others. They'd just given me exactly what I needed. Michael on tape, explicitly stating that they were planning to take control of my living situation and finances, because they believed I was declining. That, combined with the evidence that I was perfectly competent, would destroy them in court. But I still had 2.5 weeks before they filed. 2.5 weeks to gather more evidence. 2.5 weeks to prepare for war. I spent those weeks doing exactly what David Morrison told me to do. I documented everything. I recorded every conversation. I kept a detailed journal of every day, proving I was organized, coherent, and capable. I went to my volunteer shift at the church every week, got letters from the pastor about my reliable service. I consulted on 2 complex property management cases for James Caldwell, got documentation that I was still professionally sharp. I even took a cognitive function test online, one of those official ones from a university, and scored in the 95th percentile for my age group. Everything I did, I documented. Every interaction with Michael and Vanessa, I recorded. And slowly, I built an unassailable case that I was perfectly competent while they were trying to manufacture evidence of decline. 2 weeks after that phone call with Michael, Vanessa invited me to lunch. I feel like we've had some tension, she said on the phone, and I want to clear the air. Just us girls. I knew it was a setup. But I agreed, because I wanted to record what she'd say when she thought she had me alone. We met at a restaurant in South Park. Vanessa was already there, looking polished and perfect as always. Gloria, thank you for coming. I know things have been difficult. They have. I want you to know that Michael and I really do care about you. We're not trying to hurt you. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone. What's best would be honoring the agreement about the deed. She sighed. I know you're fixated on that. But Gloria, I'm going to be honest with you. We're worried about more than just the deed. We're worried about you. There's nothing to worry about. That's not what we're seeing. You're forgetting things. You're repeating yourself. You're getting confused about dates and events. And I know it's hard to admit when you're struggling, but we can see it. Vanessa, I'm not struggling. Denial is common in early cognitive decline. I've done some research. The signs are all there. What signs? She pulled out her phone and opened a note. I've been keeping track. Just out of concern. Look, October 15th, you told us about your friend Ruth's retirement party 3 separate times in one conversation. October 22nd, you couldn't remember what day Michael's birthday was. November 3rd, you called me Gloria instead of using my name. November 10th. I always call you Vanessa. Not that day. You called me Gloria. Like you forgot who you were talking to. It was all lies. Every single incident. But she had it written down, dated, detailed. This was her evidence. Vanessa, none of that happened. Gloria, I have it all documented. And it's not just me. Michael's noticed it too. So have some of your friends. They've mentioned to us that they're worried about you. Which friends? I can't say. They asked us not to mention it because they didn't want to upset you. But they've noticed the decline. More lies. But convincing ones. The kind a judge might believe. What do you want, Vanessa? I want to help you. We want to help you. But you have to admit there's a problem first. There is no problem. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something softer, more concerned. Gloria, Michael and I have been talking to a lawyer. About options. About how to make sure you're protected and cared for. There are legal arrangements we can make. Guardianship. She blinked. What? That's what you're talking about. Guardianship. Taking legal control over my finances and my life. Only if it's necessary. Only if you're not capable of managing on your own anymore. I'm perfectly capable. Then why are you so defensive? Why are you fighting us on this? If you're really as competent as you claim, you should have no problem with a medical evaluation, a financial review. I've already had medical evaluations. I'm fine. When? I shouldn't have said that either. But I was angry. Recently. Through your regular doctor? Gloria, that's not the same as a proper geriatric cognitive assessment. I'm 55. I don't need a geriatric assessment. But you do need help. And whether you admit it or not, we're going to make sure you get it. She said it so calmly, so reasonably, like she was doing me a favor. And I realized, she actually believed this. She'd told these lies so many times that she'd convinced herself they were true. Or maybe she just didn't care whether they were true or not. Either way, she was going to go through with it. I need to go, I said, standing up. Gloria, please. Don't leave like this. We're trying to help. No, you're not. But thank you for lunch. I walked out of that restaurant with my recorder in my pocket, her entire confession on tape. She'd admitted they were planning to pursue guardianship. She'd admitted they'd been documenting my supposed decline. She'd admitted they'd consulted a lawyer. She'd given me everything I needed. When I got to my car, I sat there for a minute, breathing hard, trying to calm down. Then I called David Morrison. I just had lunch with my daughter-in-law. She admitted everything. I have it on tape. Send it to me. They're going to file soon. She as good as confirmed it. Then we need to be ready. Have you finished gathering all your documentation? Yes. Everything you asked for. Good. Because when they file their petition, we're going to hit them with so much counter-evidence that they'll wish they'd never started this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed in my house, listening to the familiar sounds of my neighborhood, and thought about what was coming. A court hearing. A judge. My son and his wife trying to have me declared incompetent. Me fighting for my freed. It should have felt surreal. It should have felt impossible. But it just felt inevitable. Because this is what happened when you trusted the wrong people. When you loved the wrong people. When you gave everything to someone who saw you as an asset to be managed instead of a person to be loved. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Vanessa said you walked out of lunch. Mom, we're just trying to help. Why are you making this so hard? I stared at that text for a long time. Then I typed back. Because I know what you're planning. And I'm not going to let you do it. I hit send. 3 dots appeared immediately. Michael typing. Then stopping. Then typing again. Finally. I don't know what you think you know, but you're wrong. We love you. Everything we're doing is because we care. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and looked at the calendar. If my math was right, based on what Vanessa had said 6 weeks ago, they'd be filing their guardianship petition any day now. Maybe this week. Maybe tomorrow. And when they did, I'd be ready. Because they'd underestimated me. They'd thought I was just a 55-year-old mother who'd given them money, and would quietly accept whatever they decided to do with her life. They'd thought wrong. I was Gloria Hayes. I'd spent 30 years navigating property law, tenant disputes, and people who tried to scam the system. I knew how to fight. And I knew how to win. They were about to learn that the hard way. The petition arrived on a Thursday morning that I was in my kitchen, drinking coffee and going over the volunteer schedule for the church food pantry, when I heard the knock at my door. A process server. Young guy, polite, apologetic. Gloria Hayes. Yes. You've been served. He handed me the envelope and left. I stood on my porch holding that envelope, feeling my heart pound. Even though I'd been expecting this, I went inside and opened it. In the matter of the incompetency and guardianship of Gloria Hayes, the words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd known they were coming. Incompetency. My own son was petitioning the court to have me declared incompetent. I read through the petition slowly, forcing myself to absorb every word. Petitioners Michael Hayes and Vanessa Hayes respectfully request that the court appoint them as guardians over the person and estate of Gloria Hayes, who is no longer capable of managing her own affairs due to cognitive decline and impaired judgment. They'd listed evidence. Repeated stories and conversations, indicating short-term memory loss. Confusion about dates and events. difficulty managing finances. They claimed I'd been giving away large sums of money inappropriately. Forgetting to pay bills, a lie. Declining personal hygiene, another lie. Statements from concerned friends, anonymous, convenient. Their own observations over the past 6 months. It was a masterpiece of fiction. Every single claim was either a distortion or an outright lie. But it was detailed, specific, dated that if I didn't have my counter-evidence, it might have been believable. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks from now, February 14th, Valentine's Day. How fitting. I called David Morrison immediately. They filed, I said. I know. I got the notice this morning. I'm your attorney of record, so they had to serve me too. Have you read it? I'm reading it now. Gloria, this is worse than I thought. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? They're not just claiming cognitive decline. They're claiming you're a danger to yourself. That you've been giving money to scammers. That you're not eating properly. That you're at risk of self-neglect. They're painting a picture of someone in serious crisis. It's all lies. I know. And we're going to prove that. But we need to take this seriously. They've clearly put a lot of work into building this case. What do? We file our response. We submit all your medical evaluations, financial records, and work documentation. We call witnesses. We show the court that you're perfectly competent, and that this is a malicious attempt at financial exploitation. And Gloria? Yeah. We go on offense. We don't just defend. We attack. We show the court exactly what they're trying to do and why. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen and let myself feel it for a minute. The betrayal, the fear, the anger that my son, the boy I'd raised alone, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, had just filed legal paperwork claiming I was incompetent and needed to be placed under his control. That I let myself cry for about 5 minutes. Then I dried my eyes, pulled out my phone, and started making calls. First, I called Dr. Williams. They filed the petition, I told her. Those bastards. When's the hearing? 3 weeks. February 14th. I'll be there. I'll testify. And I'm going to make it very clear to that judge that you're one of the most cognitively sound people I know. Next, I called James Caldwell. I need you to testify that I'm still professionally competent. That I consulted on cases as recently as 2 weeks ago. Consider it done. I'll bring documentation of every case you've worked on in the last year. I called the pastor at my church, who immediately agreed to testify about my volunteer work and mental clarity. That I called Ruth in Florida, who said she'd fly in for the hearing. That I called Teresa at the bank, who said she'd provide testimony and documents proving my financial competence. By the end of the day, I had 6 witnesses lined up, all ready to testify that I was sharp, capable, and clearly being targeted. But I still felt sick, because no matter how strong my case was, this was going to be public. This was going to be in court, with a judge, with strangers listening to my son claim I was incompetent. And there was a chance, a small chance but still a chance, that I could lose, that the judge could believe them. That I could actually be declared incompetent and lose control of my life. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't focus on TV, couldn't do anything but sit and think about what was coming. My phone rang. Michael. I almost didn't answer. But I thought, maybe I should record this. Maybe he'll say something useful. I pressed record and answered. Hey, Mama. Michael. I know you got the petition. I want you to know this isn't what I wanted. But Vanessa and I really believe this is what's best for you. You filed paperwork to have me declared incompetent. How is that best for me? Because you need help and you won't accept it. This way, we can make sure you're taken care of. I don't need taking care of. Mom, please. Don't make this harder than it has to be. If you just cooperate, this can all be simple. We'll get you set up somewhere nice, make sure your bills are paid, handle everything for you. You won't have to worry about anything. I don't want to be set up somewhere. I want to live in my own house. Your house that needs repairs you can't afford? Your house where you're all alone. I can afford repairs. And I like living alone. See, this is exactly what we're talking about. You're not thinking clearly about your situation. You're isolated. You're declining. And we can't just stand by and let that continue. Michael, I am not declining. That's what everyone says. Look, the hearing is in 3 weeks. Bring whoever you want. Present whatever evidence you think you have. But the judge is going to see what Vanessa and I see, that you need help. And we're going to make sure you get it. He hung up. I saved the recording with all the others that he'd just admitted they were planning to move me out of my house and set me up somewhere nice. A facility, a nursing home, somewhere they could control me, over my dead body. The next morning, I met with David Morrison to go over our strategy. He'd prepared our response to their petition. It was 20 pages long and devastating. It included my complete medical records showing perfect cognitive function, my financial records showing responsible money management, my work history and recent consulting work, letters from 6 character witnesses, the recordings of Michael and Vanessa trying to manufacture evidence, documentation of their financial motive, the $85,000 they'd already taken, plus my house and retirement accounts worth over $400,000 total. This is a slam dunk, David said. There's no way a judge looks at this evidence and grants their petition. But we can't be complacent. They're going to have a lawyer. They're going to present their case. And sometimes judges err on the side of caution with these things. If they paint you as even slightly at risk, the judge might order a more extensive evaluation or a temporary guardianship pending further review. What do I need to do? Be sharp. Be clear. Be articulate. When you testify, you need to demonstrate beyond any doubt that you're fully competent. No hesitación, no confusión, no uncertainty. You need to be the sharpest version of yourself. I can do that. I know you can. And Gloria? When we're done with them, they're not just going to lose this petition. They're going to face consequences. I'm filing a countersuit for attempted financial exploitation, elder abuse, and fraud regarding the $85,000. We're going to make them wish they'd never started this. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared for that hearing like I was preparing for the most important exam of my life. I reviewed all my documentation. I practiced my testimony with David. I made sure every detail of my life was organized and documented. And I stayed away from Michael and Vanessa because I didn't want them to have any opportunity to create more evidence. But they didn't stay away from me. 10 days before the hearing, Vanessa showed up at my house unannounced. I saw her car pull up and immediately grabbed my recorder. Gloria, we need to talk, she said when I opened the door. We can talk through our lawyers. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat in my living room, my comfortable, modest living room that I'd furnished over 30 years, every piece chosen carefully, every item a memory. Vanessa looked around with barely concealed disdain. You could have so much better than this, she said. If you'd just let us help you. I don't want your help. Gloria, I'm going to be honest with you. That hearing in 10 days? It's not going to go the way you think. Really? Really? Because we have evidence you don't know about. We have witnesses. We have documentation. And we have a very good lawyer who specializes in these cases. So do I. Your lawyer is a small-time elder law attorney. Ours is from one of the best firms in Charlotte. He's won dozens of guardianship cases. I felt a flicker of concern but pushed it down. If your case is so strong, why are you here? Because I'm trying to give you a way out. If you agree to voluntary guardianship, if you sign over control before the hearing, we can avoid all the unpleasantness. No public court case. No testimony. No judges reviewing your private life. You just sign some papers, we take over managing things, and everyone moves forward peacefully. You mean I give you control of my life and my assets without a fight? I mean you accept help gracefully instead of forcing us to prove in court that you need it. And if I don't, her face hardened, then we go to court. And we win. And you end up in a much worse position than if you just cooperated. Because once a judge declares you incompetent, Gloria, you have no say anymore. None. We decide where you live, how your money is spent, who you see, everything. Is that really what you want? You're not going to win. Yes, we are. Because you don't understand what we have. You think this is just about some phone calls and some confusion? We have so much more than that. Like what? She smiled. You'll see. At the hearing. And when the judge rules in our favor and you're placed under our guardianship, I want you to remember this conversation. Remember that I gave you a chance to make this easy. She stood up. 10 days, Gloria. Think about what you want your life to look like after that hearing, because it's going to change either way. The only question is whether you have any dignity left when it's over. After she left, I sat in my living room, shaking that she'd tried to intimidate me, to scare me into giving up. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't work a little. Because what if she was right? What if they did have more evidence I didn't know about? What if their lawyer was better than mine? What if I lost? I called David Morrison. They just tried to get me to sign voluntary guardianship, I told him. Of course they did. That's a common tactic. Scare the target into surrendering before the hearing. She said they have evidence I don't know about. They're bluffing. Trust me, Gloria. I've seen their petition. I know what they have. It's all manufactured nonsense. Your evidence is ironclad. She said their lawyer is from one of the best firms in Charlotte. So what? A good lawyer can't make up for a bad case. And their case is terrible. Stop letting them get in your head. That's what they want. He was right. I knew he was right, but I still couldn't shake the fear. That night, I barely slept and I kept thinking about Vanessa's words. Once a judge declares you incompetent, you have no say anymore. None. The loss of freedom. The loss of control. The loss of self. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, taken away by a judge's signature at 3 a.m., I got out of bed and went to my kitchen that I made tea and sat at my table, looking around at my modest house. This was mine. I'd earned it. Every wall, every window, every floorboard. And they wanted to take it. They wanted to sell it, pocket the money, and put me in some facility where I'd be convenient. Not because I needed help. Because they wanted my money that I thought about Michael. The little boy I'd raised, the young man I'd put through college, the son I'd loved with everything I had. And I thought about who he'd become. Someone who valued money more than his mother. Someone who'd rather believe lies about me than stand up to his wife. Someone who was willing to have me declared incompetent and locked away, so he could inherit early that I'd failed him somehow. Failed to teach him the right values. Failed to show him what really mattered. Or maybe I'd succeeded too well. Worked so hard to give him opportunities that he'd never learned what it meant to sacrifice for someone else. Either way, here we were. Mother and son about to face each other in court. Him trying to take my freedom, me trying to save it. I finished my tea as the sun started to rise. In 9 days, we'd be in that courtroom, and one of us was going to lose everything that I needed to make sure it wasn't me. The week before the hearing, strange things started happening. First, I got a call from my homeowner's insurance company saying my policy had been canceled due to non-payment. I'd paid that bill on time. I had the receipt. When I called to straighten it out, they said someone had called claiming to be me and requested cancellation. It took me 3 hours and multiple documents to prove my identity and reinstate the policy. Then my credit card was declined at the grocery store. I called the bank. Someone had reported the card stolen and had it frozen. Again, it took hours to fix. Then I got a notice from the electric company saying my service would be shut off for non-payment, that I'd paid that bill too. Each incident was small. Each one could be explained as a bureaucratic error. But taken together, they painted a picture. A woman who couldn't manage her basic affairs. A woman who was forgetting to pay bills, canceling important services, losing track of her finances. They were sabotaging me. Creating evidence of incompetence right before the hearing that I documented everything. Every false claim, every hour I spent fixing their sabotage, every call to prove my identity and competence. And I called David Morrison. They're escalating, I told him. This actually works in our favor. It shows how desperate they are. It proves they know their case is weak. Document everything and bring it to the hearing. It'll help demonstrate the extent of their manipulation. On the Friday before the Monday hearing, 4 days away, my neighbor Mr. Peterson knocked on my door. "Gloria, I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" "A man came by yesterday. Said he was from Adult Protective Services. Asked me questions about you. About whether I'd noticed any decline in your mental state, any problems with your house, any signs you weren't taking care of yourself." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you're one of the sharpest, most capable people I know, that your house is immaculate, that you help me with legal questions all the time. I told him whoever reported you was full of it." "Thank you." But Gloria, he seemed to already have his mind made up, like he was just checking boxes. He had a whole file on you. I don't know what's in it, but it looked official. After Mr. Peterson left, I called David Morrison again. "They got Adult Protective Services involved," I said. "That's a smart move on their part. If APS opens an investigation and finds concerns, that'll strengthen their case. But it can also backfire if the investigation shows you're fine." The investigator already talked to my neighbor. It sounded like he had a file already. They probably provided APS with all their manufactured evidence. But don't worry. APS will do their own evaluation. They'll talk to you, assess your home, review your situation. And when they see that you're completely competent, their report will actually help us. When will they contact me? Probably early next week, right before the hearing. Sure enough, on Sunday afternoon, the day before the hearing, I got a call from an APS investigator named Karen Shaw. "Ms. Hayes, I need to conduct a home visit as part of an investigation. Can I come by this evening?" "Of course." She arrived at 6 p.m. Middle-aged white woman, professional, carrying a clipboard and a folder that looked exactly like what Mr. Peterson had described that I let her in. My house spotless as always, everything organized, everything in place. She walked through slowly, taking notes. "Ms. Hayes, I'm here because we received a report of concern. Your son and daughter-in-law filed a complaint suggesting you may need assistance with daily living. I'm aware. They're also trying to have me declared incompetent, so they can take guardianship." Her eyebrows went up. "I see. And how do you feel about that?" "I feel like it's a fraudulent attempt to steal my assets." "That's a strong accusation." "I have strong evidence." I showed her everything. The medical evaluations. The financial records. The work history. The recordings of Michael and Vanessa trying to manufacture evidence that I showed her the timeline of sabotage. The canceled insurance, the frozen credit card. The false claims to utility companies that I showed her my home, clean, organized, well-maintained that I showed her my medication organizer, just vitamins, my calendar, full of appointments and activities, my pantry well-stocked, my bills, all paid and filed neatly. Karen Shaw took notes on everything. "Ms. Hayes, I'm going to be frank with you. Based on what I'm seeing here, I don't see any evidence of self-neglect or inability to manage your affairs. Your home is in excellent condition. You're clearly organized and competent. Your medical records are impressive." I felt relief wash over me. "However," she continued, "I also have a file here from your son and daughter-in-law with very specific allegations. Dates, times, incidents. Either they're fabricating all of this, or there's a serious discrepancy in perception." "They're fabricating it. Do you have evidence of that?" I played her one of the recordings. The one where Vanessa tried to convince me I'd told her a story twice when I hadn't. Karen Shaw listened, her expression growing darker. "I see. Ms. Hayes, I'm going to file my report tomorrow morning before your hearing. It will state that I found no evidence of impairment, self-neglect, or need for guardianship. In fact, I'm going to note that you appear to be the victim of a malicious and potentially fraudulent guardianship petition." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I'm just documenting what I see. But Ms. Hayes, be prepared tomorrow. They clearly have a strategy. They're going to try to paint you as unreliable, confused, and potentially mentally ill. You need to stay calm, stay clear, and trust that the truth will come out." After she left, I sat in my quiet house and tried to prepare myself mentally for what was coming. Tomorrow morning, I'd walk into that courthouse. I'd sit across from my son and his wife. I'd listen to them tell a judge I was incompetent. And then I'd fight for my freedom. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in bed, running through everything in my mind. The evidence. The testimony. The questions I might be asked. At 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep and got up. I made coffee, showered, put on my best suit, professional, dignified, competent. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. for the 9 o'clock hearing. David Morrison was already there, looking sharp in his lawyer's suit, a briefcase full of evidence beside him. "You ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay calm. Answer clearly. Don't let them rattle you. And trust that the evidence speaks for itself." At 8:55, Michael and Vanessa arrived with their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked exactly like what Vanessa had described. Polished, professional, confident. Michael wouldn't look at me. Vanessa stared directly at me, her face unreadable. At 9 a.m., we were called into the courtroom. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to my lawyer, presided. She was in her 60s, black, with an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much. She looked at the file in front of her, then at all of us. "This is a guardianship petition filed by Michael Hayes and Vanessa Hayes seeking to be appointed guardians over Gloria Hayes, who they claim is incompetent to manage her own affairs. Ms. Hayes is represented by counsel and is opposing this petition. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," both lawyers said. "All right. Let's proceed. Mr. Crawford, you're representing the petitioners. Present your case." Michael and Vanessa's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my clients love Ms. Hayes very much. She's Michael's mother, and they've watched with growing concern as she's declined over the past year. They're not here to hurt her. They're here because they can't stand by and watch her put herself at risk due to cognitive impairment she refuses to acknowledge." He spent 20 minutes laying out their case. The incidents they documented. The concerns from anonymous friends. The evidence of confusion and memory problems. It was all lies, but he presented it convincingly. Then he called his first witness, Vanessa. She took the stand, looking sad and concerned, playing the role of the worried daughter-in-law perfectly. "Ms. Hayes, can you tell the court what you've observed regarding Gloria's mental state?" "It's been heartbreaking," Vanessa said, her voice catching slightly. "She's such a strong woman, and to watch her struggle with basic things, forgetting conversations, repeating herself, getting confused about dates and events, it's been devastating." She gave specific examples. All fabricated. All delivered with perfect sincerity. "And have you tried to help her?" "We've tried everything. We've offered to help manage her finances, to help with her home maintenance, to include her in our lives. But she's become increasingly paranoid. She accuses us of trying to steal from her, of lying to her. She can't see that we're just trying to help." David Morrison stood. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is offering opinions about Ms. Hayes' mental state without medical qualification." Sustained. "Ms. Hayes, stick to what you observed, not your interpretation." But the damage was done. Vanessa had painted a picture of a paranoid, declining woman who couldn't see that people were trying to help her. Next, they called Michael. He looked miserable on the stand. Good. He should be miserable. "Mr. Hayes, this is your mother. Why are you here asking the court to declare her incompetent?" "Because I love her," Michael said, his voice thick. "And I can't watch her destroy herself. She's given away huge sums of money inappropriately. She's not maintaining her house. She's isolated herself from friends and family. And she refuses to admit there's a problem." "Can you give specific examples?" "She gave me $85,000 and then claimed we'd made an agreement I never agreed to. She insisted her name should be on our house deed, even though we'd never discussed that. When we tried to explain that wasn't possible, she became angry and accused us of stealing from her." He was twisting everything, making my legitimate concerns sound like delusions. "Have you noticed other signs of cognitive decline?" "Yes. She repeats stories. She forgets conversations. She gets dates wrong. Last month, she called me 3 times about the same issue, not remembering she'd already asked. All lies. Mr. Hayes, do you want to take your mother's freedom away?" No. Michael looked directly at the judge. I want to protect her. I want to make sure she's safe and cared for. If that means we have to legally manage her affairs until she's stable, then yes, we're willing to do that. Because she's my mother, and I love her. I wanted to stand up and scream that he was lying, that everything he was saying was calculated manipulation. But David had told me to stay calm, to trust the process. So I sat there and listened to my son destroy me. After Michael's testimony, their lawyer rested. Mr. Morrison, your turn, Judge Morrison said. David stood. Your Honor, this is one of the most egregious cases of attempted financial exploitation I've seen in 20 years of practice. The petitioners have systematically manufactured evidence of incompetence to gain control over Ms. Hayes' substantial assets. With your permission, I'd like to present evidence that will demonstrate not only Ms. Hayes' complete competence, but also the petitioner's malicious intent. Proceed. What happened next was beautiful. David presented my medical evaluations. Dr. Williams's letter stating I was cognitively sound. The test results showing perfect memory and reasoning. He presented my financial records. 25 years of responsible banking, not a single overdraft, perfect credit score. He presented my work history. James Caldwell's letter detailing my recent consulting work on complex cases. He presented the APS report. Karen Shaw's statement that she'd found no evidence of impairment. He presented letters from 6 character witnesses. And then he played the recordings. Vanessa trying to convince me I was confused. Michael leading questions to make me seem forgetful. Vanessa's admission at lunch that they'd been documenting my decline and consulting a lawyer about arrangements. And the most damning one, the conversation I'd overheard. Vanessa on the phone with her mother, discussing the guardianship filing and selling both houses. The courtroom went silent as that last recording played. Judge Morrison's expression shifted from neutral to angry. When the recording ended, she looked at Michael and Vanessa like they were something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. Mr. Crawford, do your clients have any explanation for what we just heard? Their lawyer looked shaken. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to consult with my clients. Denied. Answer the question. Vanessa leaned over to whisper to her lawyer. He shook his head. She whispered more urgently. Finally he stood. Your Honor, my clients maintain that their concerns about Ms. Hayes are genuine, and that any statements on those recordings are being taken out of context. Out of context? Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. I just heard Mrs. Hayes explicitly discuss filing for guardianship, so they could gain control of Ms. Hayes' assets and sell both houses. What context makes that appropriate? Your Honor, they're concerned about their ability to care for Ms. Hayes long-term if she continues to decline. Except there is no decline. I have medical evaluations from a licensed physician, cognitive test results, financial records, work history, and an APS report, all of which indicate that Ms. Hayes is completely competent. What I don't have is any actual evidence of incompetence beyond your client's word. And given what I've just heard on those recordings, your client's word is worth less than nothing. She turned to me. Ms. Hayes, would you please take the stand? I stood and walked to the witness box, my heart pounding but my head clear. Ms. Hayes, I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. I have a few questions for you. Yes, Your Honor. Can you tell me today's date? February 14th, 2025. Valentine's Day. Can you tell me your address? I gave it. Can you tell me your son's birth date? I gave it. She asked me a series of questions. Basic cognitive assessments, financial questions, recent events. I answered every single one correctly, clearly, without hesitation. Ms. Hayes, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, Your Honor. My son and daughter-in-law are attempting to have me declared incompetent, so they can gain control of my assets. Specifically, they want access to my house, which is worth approximately $280,000, and my retirement accounts, which total approximately $150,000. They've already taken $85,000 from me under false pretenses, and they want more. Do you feel you need assistance managing your affairs? No, Your Honor. I'm 55 years old. I worked in property management for 30 years. I manage my own finances, maintain my own home, volunteer in my community, and still consult on complex real estate cases. I don't need help. I need my son to honor his promises and leave me alone. Judge Morrison nodded. Thank you, Ms. Hayes. You may step down. She looked at both lawyers. I'm ready to rule. This petition is denied. I find no evidence whatsoever that Ms. Hayes is incompetent or in need of guardianship. In fact, I find substantial evidence that this petition was filed in bad faith for the purpose of financial exploitation. Vanessa started to stand. Her lawyer pulled her back down. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I'm ordering a copy of this proceeding to be sent to Adult Protective Services for investigation of potential elder abuse. I'm also awarding Ms. Hayes' attorney's fees to be paid by the petitioners. And I'm strongly encouraging Ms. Hayes to pursue any legal remedies available to her regarding the $85,000 referenced in testimony. She looked directly at Michael and Vanessa. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Attempting to rob your own mother of her freedom and her assets is despicable. If I ever see another petition like this from you, I will hold you in contempt and refer you for prosecution. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, their lawyer said quickly. Good. This court is adjourned. She stood and left. I sat there, shaking, hardly able to believe it was over. I'd won. They'd lost. My freedom was still mine. David Morrison put his hand on my shoulder. Congratulations, Gloria. You did it. Across the courtroom, Michael and Vanessa were standing, Vanessa's face twisted with rage, Michael looking like he wanted to disappear. Their lawyer was packing up quickly, clearly wanting to get away from them. As I stood to leave, Vanessa caught my eye. The look she gave me was pure hatred. But I didn't care. Because I'd won. And she'd lost everything. After the hearing, David Morrison walked me out of the courthouse. What happens now? I asked. Now you go home and live your life. They can't touch you. And I'm going to file a civil suit for the return of your $85,000, plus damages for emotional distress and legal fees. Will we win? After what just happened in there? Absolutely. They have no defense. And Gloria? That recording you got of Vanessa discussing the sale of both houses? That's evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. I'm also recommending you file a criminal complaint. Against my own son? Against the people who tried to steal your freedom? Yes. I thought about that as I drove home. Part of me didn't want to pursue it further. Didn't want to drag this out. But the other part, the part that had just spent 3 weeks terrified I'd lose everything, wanted them to face real consequences. Idi decide later. For now, I just wanted to go home. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a few minutes, just looking at my house. My house. That they'd wanted to sell. That they'd planned to sell, putting me in some facility against my will. I got out and walked to my front door, unlocked it, stepped inside. Everything exactly as I'd left it. Quiet. Peaceful. Mine. I made tea and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read that deed 6 months ago and realized something was wrong. 6 months. 6 months of investigation, fear, preparation, and finally, victory. My phone rang. Ruth. I saw you walking out of the courthouse with your lawyer. Tell me you won. I won. They lost. The judge denied the petition and ordered them to pay my legal fees. Thank God. Gloria, I'm so proud of you. You fought back and you won. I don't feel like I won. I feel like I lost my son. You lost him a long time ago. Today you just made it official. She was right. Over the next few days, I tried to process everything that had happened. I'd won the legal battle, but I'd lost my relationship with Michael, probably permanently. Part of me kept hoping he'd call, apologize, say he'd been wrong, that Vanessa had manipulated him, that he wanted to make things right. But he didn't call. Instead, 3 days after the hearing, I got a letter from their lawyer. It wasn't an apology. It was a settlement offer. They'd return $42,500, exactly half of what they'd taken, if I agreed not to pursue further legal action. I showed it to David Morrison. "This is insulting," he said. "They're trying to buy their way out of facing real consequences. Reject it. We're going to sue for the full amount plus damages." "How long will that take?" "Could be a year or more. Civil cases move slowly, but we'll win." "And the criminal complaint? That's up to you. I can't advise you on that. It's your decision whether to press charges." I thought about it for days. Finally, I decided, yes. I was filing a criminal complaint. Not because I wanted revenge, but because what they'd done was criminal. Fraud. Attempted financial exploitation. Elder abuse. And if I didn't press charges, they'd just do it to someone else someday. I filed the complaint with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. A detective named Sarah Rodriguez took my statement. "Ms. Hayes, I'm going to be honest. These cases are hard to prosecute. Family members claim misunderstandings. Judges are reluctant to see families torn apart. But what you have, the recordings, the evidence, the judge's ruling, that's stronger than most cases I see." "Will they go to jail?" "Probably not for a first offense, if they're even charged. But they'll have records. And if they try this again with someone else, there'll be a paper trail." 2 months later, David Morrison called with news. "I have an update on your case. Michael and Vanessa's lawyer reached out. They want to settle." "For how much?" "Full return of the $85,000, plus $20,000 in damages and penalties, plus your legal fees. $112,000 total." "And in exchange?" "You drop the civil suit and agree not to cooperate with any criminal prosecution." I sat with that for a moment. They were offering me more money than they'd taken. Enough to make me whole, and then some. But only if I let them get away with what they'd tried to do. "What do you think I should do?" I asked David. "That's not a legal question. That's a personal one. Do you want the money, or do you want justice?" "Can I have both?" "Probably not. If you reject this settlement and push forward with the criminal case, they'll fight the civil case tooth and nail. It could take years. You might win, you might not. And criminal cases are even harder. Prosecutors might not even file charges. This settlement guarantees you get your money back, right now, plus substantial damages. But they get away with it. Legally, yes. But Gloria, think about what they've already lost. They went to court to have you declared incompetent. And instead a judge publicly called them out for elder abuse. They have that on their record now. They paid your legal fees. And now they're paying you $112,000 because they know if this goes further, they could face criminal charges. They haven't gotten away with anything. They've just managed to limit the damage." He had a point. "Give me a day to think about it," I said. That night, I called Ruth. "Take the money," she said immediately. "You've already won. You proved they were wrong. You humiliated them in court. You got your freedom back. Now take the money and move on with your life." But they tried to have me declared incompetent. They tried to steal everything I have. And they failed. And now they're paying for it. Gloria, you're 55 years old. You have years ahead of you. Don't spend them fighting legal battles. Take the money, rebuild your relationship with yourself, and let them live with what they did. The next morning, I called David Morrison. "Accept the settlement," I said. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Get my money back. Make them pay the damages. And then I'm done with them." 3 weeks later, I received a check for $112,000. I deposited it, paid off the few remaining bills I had, and put the rest back into my retirement accounts. I was financially secure again. More secure than before, actually. But I'd lost my son. Michael never called. Never apologized. Never acknowledged what he'd done. He and Vanessa just disappeared from my life. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they'd sold their house in South Charlotte and moved. Somewhere in California, someone said. Getting a fresh start. Running away from what they'd tried to do. I tried not to think about them. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life. I increased my volunteer hours at the church. Started consulting more frequently for James Caldwell. Joined a book club with some women from my neighborhood. Ruth flew up to visit every few months. We'd have dinner, drink wine, laugh about old times. Dr. Williams checked in regularly, making sure I was okay both physically and mentally. And slowly, very slowly, I started to heal. Not from the legal battle. That was over, I'd won. But from the loss of my son. From realizing that the boy I'd raised, the man I'd sacrificed everything for, had valued money more than me. That was a wound that would take time to heal. Maybe it would never fully heal. But I was okay with that. Because I'd learned something important through all of this. My worth didn't come from being a mother. It didn't come from Michael's love or lack thereof. It came from me. From my strength. From my resilience. From my refusal to let anyone, even my own son, steal my freedom. I was working in my garden on a Saturday afternoon when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello. Mom. I froze. Michael's voice. It's me. Don't hang up. Please. I sat down on my porch steps, my heart racing. I'm listening. I'm calling to. I need to say this. I was wrong. About everything. What Vanessa and I tried to do was wrong. It was evil. And I'm sorry. Silence. I've been in therapy. Individual therapy and marriage counseling. And I'm starting to see how she manipulated me. How she poisoned me against you. How she convinced me that taking your money and your freedom was somehow helping you. Michael. Please let me finish. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did. I know I tried to destroy you. And I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. I heard him crying. Vanessa and I are getting divorced. Turns out, she did this to her first husband's father too. Before we met. Got him declared incompetent, took control of his assets, drained his accounts. I found out 3 months ago. That's why we moved to California. She was running from a lawsuit. Michael. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I chose her over you. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I tried to take your freedom. I'm sorry for all of it. I sat there on my porch steps, tears running down my face, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive him immediately, to tell him it was okay, that we could fix this, that he could come home. But it wasn't okay. And we couldn't just fix it. And there was no home to come back to. We'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I appreciate the apology, I said finally. And I'm glad you're getting help. But Michael, you tried to have me declared incompetent. You tried to steal my house. You tried to take everything from me. That's not something I can just forgive because you're sorry. I know. Maybe someday. But not now. Not yet. I understand. And Michael, if you ever try anything like that again, with me, or with anyone else, I won't just fight you in court. I'll make sure you go to prison. Do you understand? Yes. Good. I hung up. And I sat there on my porch, in my house, in my neighborhood, in my life, and let myself feel it all. The grief, the anger, the relief, the sadness, all of it. But mostly I felt something else. Peace. Because I'd done it. I'd fought for my freedom and won. I'd stood up to people trying to take everything from me, and I'd survived. I'd more than survived. I'd won. And no one, not Michael, not Vanessa, not anyone, could ever take that away from me. I was sitting in my kitchen on a Tuesday morning, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find a young woman I didn't recognize. Early 30s, nervous looking. Ms. Hayes? Gloria Hayes. Yes. My name is Jennifer Crawford. I'm the daughter of the man Vanessa Hayes scammed before she married your son. My father, he died last year. But before he died, he told me about her. About what she did to him. And then I saw the court records from your case. And I realized she'd tried to do the same thing to you. I'm so sorry about your father. Thank you. I'm here because there are others. Other families she's targeted. And we're building a case. A real case with prosecutors and everything. But we need testimony from people who've dealt with her directly. People who have evidence. I have evidence. Would you be willing to share it? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes. Kumain. We spent 2 hours going through everything. The recordings. The documents. The timeline. The judge's ruling. When Jennifer left, she had copies of everything. This is going to help so much, she said. My father never got justice. But maybe the next family will. After she left, I felt something settle in my chest. This was why I'd kept fighting. Why I'd documented everything. Why I'd refused to just take the settlement and be quiet. Because it wasn't just about me. It was about all the Gloria Hayeses out there. All the older women being targeted by people who saw them as assets instead of human beings. All the mothers whose children had learned to value money more than love. All the families being destroyed by greed disguised as concern. If my fight could help even one person avoid what I went through, it was worth it. I'm 57 now. 2 years past that hearing. 2 years past the worst betrayal of my life. And you know what? I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. My house is still mine. My retirement accounts are healthy. My freedom is intact. I volunteer at the church 3 days a week. I consult for James Caldwell regularly. I have friends, hobbies, a life I've built on my own terms. Michael and I talk occasionally. Stiff, careful conversations about nothing important. We're not close. We probably never will be again. But I've made peace with that. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Real love doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't ask you to be less than you are. It doesn't try to control you or take your freedom. Real love shows up. Real love does the work. Real love respects boundaries. And when someone, even your own child, stops showing you real love, you don't just accept it because they're family. You fight back. You document everything. You build your case. You protect yourself. And you walk away with your dignity intact. I spent 30 years raising Michael. 30 years sacrificing, working, loving. And in the end, he chose money over me. That's his loss. Not mine. Because I still have myself. I still have my strength. I still have my freedom. And that's more valuable than any inheritance, any house, any relationship. I'm Gloria Hayes. I'm 57 years old. And I'm free. That's all that matters.